As a preliminary, so I call this meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Irfan Nasrullah, the Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Amy Ritterbush?
Ritterbush here.
Brendan Tedstone?
Stone, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere? And Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Norman Kamalu?
Here.
Elaine Lazarus?
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative if you're here. Ivania Mata?
Here.
Priya Vasudevan?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hello. Matthew Latour? Joseph Bennett? Tim O'Leary? Ben Sweeney? Chris Hammonds? Well, I guess they'll all be joining us in a little bit. Good evening. This is an open meeting of the Hopkinton Select Board. It's being conducted remotely pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and unmute yourself when it's time to speak. And please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after the members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will first address members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call them each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Before we get to our first agenda item, let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public forum. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? If so, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom. And when called upon, identify yourself by name and address first. So I see one hand raised. That would be Darlene Hayes. Ben, can you liven her up? Darlene, you have 2 minutes.
It's actually really quick. With everything that's going on in the world, it's Darlene Hayes, 1/3 Road in Hopkinton. I wanted to see if there was possible that, like other communities are doing, if Town Hall could light up in the put out lights of the Ukraine flag, and then maybe do some stuff on social media this month, recognizing Women's History Month. That was it.
I'm sorry, you faded out at the beginning about the flag.
Oh, I wanted to see if we could put some sort of lights out in front of Town Hall or at the gazebo or so. A lot of communities are putting out the lights the colored lights of the Ukraine flag in solidarity. And I was hoping we could do something similar. And then I just wanted to see if I don't know who does the social media for the town, but maybe doing some, post about, Women's History Month. And we've had some pretty cool women throughout the years, not only serving in the town, but volunteering and stuff. And I thought it might be kind of cool from stuff from like the 300th anniversary pulled out. That was it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next we have Cheryl Walsh. Ben, can you liven her up? Cheryl, you're up.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Cheryl Ann Walsh, 5 Pond Street. I work with Project Just Because, and I just wanted to comment. I know COVID has made the need in our community worse and the surrounding communities. And I just wanted everyone to know that we're here to help as a resource, and we're going to be expanding, and we just want to help the community and do the best we can to be there for everybody.
Thank you. I mean, I think service you're providing with Project Just Because is invaluable. And I'm happy to see that that you're volunteering and putting it out there that you are there.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, if I may, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure. Ms. Qualley.
In speaking with Sherilyn early this week, I think her intention is to share these comments as part of the FY23 budget listening session.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Charlotte, if you want to stick around, we will be having the listening session in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So
Through the chair,
yes.
Mr. Nasrullah, if I may, I'd like to just take a minute and recognize the passing of Mr. Aubrey Doyle. He passed away last week. He was a guy, kind of the epitome of what Hopkinton used to be. A really, really wonderful guy. Was a teacher for like 35, 40 years, athletic director for 20 years, went to Hopkinton schools, went to Brown, was a wonderful athlete despite having polio, turned a lot of the people in town into good students. And I can tell you, I had him as a teacher. I don't really remember a lot because I was very young then, but through the years of being very good friends with his children, I learned a lot of lessons from him throughout my young adult and all the way up through within the last year or so. I would see him at cookouts or town events, and just cherished to be able to sit down with the guy and just pick his brain and just know what a wonderful person he is. He always had the green jacket for Hopkinton. He always had the green tie, and he just bled green. I remember they have that charity football tournament. I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have that charity football tournament the day after Thanksgiving at the high school. It was one-hand touch. So the Sager kid in town kept having a team that would win it every year. So my friend Tommy McIntyre put a team in it and said, I don't want to lose. So I went out and I got Steve Burton, Hopkinton resident, his brother Phil, Doug, Darren, Billy. No, I'm sorry, Doug wasn't there, but Darren and Billy Flutie. And we walked through the tournament. And I will tell you, I have not received such a verbal whooping after that tournament as I did from Mr. Doyle, because all the people on the roster were not Hopkinton residents or graduates. He really, really was the epitome of somebody that had Hopkinton pride. He raised his children to have Hopkinton pride, his grandchildren, and he's got some great grandchildren. His wife, Joan, is still alive. They live on Church Street, and just a wonderful family. And I was going to write down a bunch of speaking points to speak about today on him. I did not do that because I never do that. But it just comes natural. One of the things that that we went back and forth on, even up until the last cookout I had at his son's house a year ago. When he was a teacher, he was the epitome of a Democrat. He was a Democrat no matter what. And I used to say to him, no, Mr. Doyle, it doesn't make a difference if Charles Manson was running as a Democrat or the Pope was running as a Republican, you would still vote Democrat. And he'd look at me with his kind of his crooked smile and say, you're absolutely right. He's a wonderful guy, despite that ideology. But he's someone, there are very few people left in this town that are steeped in the history as he is. And we will miss him terribly as the town goes. And I will personally miss being able to sit down at these cookouts and pick his brain and get his opinion. So rest in peace, Mr. Doyle.
Rest in peace. Thank you, Brendan, for bringing that up.
Can I add one thing through the chair?
Course, please.
I just wanted to say I've known Aubrey for a long time, and he also coached 3 different sports at the high school, and the gym is named after him. It's the Doyle Gym in the middle school, and his children, there are at least 2 serving on boards still in this town. So I know his son is, and I know one of his daughters is, and his legacy lives on. He's wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate you, both of you, bringing these things up, and it's very sad when we lose such an established member of our community.
And Irfan, if I could just off topic, do we have Bill Miller here today? Is he in the audience?
See him as a panelist, yeah.
So I'm gonna just kind of go off the hip here, and so we had a really big fire in town today, and I believe it went to 3 alarms, and he didn't know that I was going to call him up, but I understand through speaking to a few people that it was a very successful attack by our fire department. So I would love to liven his mic up and see if he'd like to give us an update on that, and
Absolutely.
hopefully be able to toot his own horn for he and his staff.
Absolutely. Ben, can you liven him up? I see he has his hand raised, so
I am through you, Mr. Chair. I am here. Can you hear me?
can hear you fine.
All right. Good evening. I'll keep this brief. Mr. Tedstone, thank you. This afternoon at approximately 12:32, our communications center received multiple 911 calls reporting a fire on the porch at number 10 Mayhew Street. Excuse me. Upon our arrival, I was the first one on scene. I found heavy fire from what we call the Delta D side of the building, 2nd floor porch, extending up to the 3rd floor and auto extending up into the attic. Ladder 1 arrived. We went to what we call a working fire, requesting mutual aid right out of the gate, made an aggressive attack. The fire did get ahead of us, ended up going up to the 3rd floor and up through the roof of the backside of the building. The crews, our mutual aid crews, everyone did an outstanding job. Unfortunately, there were 6 residents displaced. There were 4 units in that building. All have another facility or home to go to. So Red Cross was not needed. There is a large dollar loss to the building. And again, I cannot commend the staff of HFD and all of our mutual aid partners enough. They did an outstanding job today.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad to see that you were able to take care of that, and it's sad that people are losing the residences, but hats off to you. Great job.
Yep, and one more
I had a chief from a surrounding town, is how it came to light to my eyes, and he called to tell me what a wonderful job Chief Miller and the guys did. So I'm sorry, Chief, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue and just kind of put you on the spot here, but that's what I do. Great job. And I heard it from someone that is far more knowledgeable in the fire service than I. So wonderful job to you, and please pass our thanks and congratulations on to your staff and the surrounding towns that gave us help.
I will And thank you. No problem calling me out. Also, one more quick kudos is our communication center. As busy it is, they are really the heart of the organization on an incident like this, calling our mutual aid partners. So they did an outstanding job as well, too.
Right.
Thank you.
That's thank you. Really appreciate that. And great job.
Thank you.
All right. So moving to our next agenda item, it's the consent agenda. The board will consider approving the consent agenda consisting of A, approval of the minutes of the select board meeting on February 8th and February 15, 2022. And B, accepting the resignations of Ekaterina Nemova from the Cultural Council. Would any members like to break any item out for a separate vote? No. All right, then I
Chair,
request.
I move to approve the consent agenda item as written.
Second.
All right, we have.
I just want to thank Ekaterina for her service to the town. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's great when people are volunteering, and unfortunately, I guess she's moving away, so that's the resignation. But we have a consent. We have a motion that's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Amy Ritterbush,
Ritterbush, yes.
Brendan Tedstone,
Ted Stone, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere,
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
and Muriel Kramer.
Yeah.
Oop,
That was
cut
a
out.
yes.
Okay, and our fondness rule is a yes as well. Board and committee appointments. The select board will consider applications submitted to fill a vacancy on the youth commission. There is one full member vacancy for a term expiring June 30th, 2022, which means that that person who is appointed would need to request reappointment within the next few months to a full 3-year term. There are also openings for student representatives for the middle school and the high school. We have 2 applicants. We have Ivania Mata and Priya Vasudevan. Are you both here?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
All right, why don't we start with Ivania?
Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, you want to tell us a little something about yourself?
Of course. So I'm a current sophomore at Hopkinton High School, and I'm really excited to hopefully join the Youth Commission. I have been working a lot through the town for the past couple years. I'm the secretary and project director, I guess to call it, for the Hopkinton High School Diversity Club. I manage a lot of the fundraisers that we do and a lot of the organizations that we partner with to get projects done, such as the South Asian community of Hopkinton and the Hopkinton Freedom Team. Additionally, I work a lot with the school. I'm on the school council, and I am also a part of the DEI Student Voices team at the high school. So I saw the vacancy for the Hopkinton Youth Commission and thought it would be a great opportunity for me to get more inclusive and involved in my town. And I think Hopkinton's such an amazing place for young students to come and share their voices and opinions. And I see a lot of them at the high school and the middle school, having a younger brother at the middle school right now. And so I thought I would take the chance and hopefully make it on the board to be able to share my ideas and discussion with people, like-minded people like me. So it's a little bit about myself. Thank you.
So I reviewed your resume, and I gotta say, it's pretty extensive for a sophomore in high school.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, yes, thank you.
board members, have any questions or comments? Start with Amy.
I guess, can we hear from both first? Then I could ask the question of both.
I have a
Yeah, well,
question.
why don't we hear from Priya as well?
Yeah.
Before we do that, both of these people are not looking for the same position.
Correct.
Priya,
That is
you're looking for the full-time position, you're not a student, right?
Correct.
Two different positions that we're filling. Okay, just wanted to make that clear.
I think they both applied for the full member position, though.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, but we have one student and we have one full vacancy, right?
Those are the 2 vacancies, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Priya, do you want to tell us a little something about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. So I moved to Hopkinton right on the onset of COVID, March 2020, and I have been engaging our youth in our neighborhood, which is 100 plus home over here, for the food drive, for the cultural events, which Mrs. Kramer was also invited in that cultural event. Hi, Mrs. Kramer. Okay. And also to in my daughter's local dance school, where I've been engaging with the youth and their families together. And now with I'm in a stage in my life where I can devote more time, and I wanted to take it beyond my neighborhood to at the town level, and where I can bring the positive impact and involve more youth in their families and bringing the positive impact to the community. So that's pretty much about myself. I'm mother of two kids, which I said in my resume. I didn't put a proper resume per se, because I thought, like, I'll keep it very simple. The mother of two, middle schooler and elementary schooler, been in US, and after moving across the country, Hopkinton is my home now, and I'm truly grateful for how wonderful community it is. And that's why I want to give back, use this opportunity to give back to the community when I have this time in my hand right now. That's all about me.
Thank you, thank you. We love people who like to give back. Board members, any questions? We'll start with Amy.
This is a really hard one because I really like to be able to appoint both of you to the full member spot, but there's just the one. I guess I would like to hear from you if either of you would be open to, were there other positions open in town, or if Ivania, being a high school student, would be open to the youth member position so that we could put everybody in. But anyway, so just be curious to hear your thoughts. There are other openings in other committees too.
Ivania, would you be open to the youth member?
Yeah, of course. I think I was actually under the impression that Ms. Vasudevan was actually a middle schooler. So I thought we would both be going up for that spot. But if she'd like to take the full position and I take the student position, that's totally fine by me.
Right. Mr. Tedstone, any questions, comments?
No, I would say thank you to both for applying, and thank you for the candidates kind of being able to divide and conquer and fill up the board. I think that's perfect, and it makes our life very much easier, not having to make a difficult decision.
Sounds good. Mary Jo Lafreniere.
Oh, I think that they're both wonderful candidates, and I'm glad to see both of them take a place on that board. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more. Muriel Kramer.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and ask a question just for the fun of it. But first, I want to say thank you to both of you. And Ivania, I'm especially impressed with your composure and the way you present yourself as such a young woman, and really, really thrilled that you're willing to put your energies into a town board and so flexible on approach. So that's does make it so much easier for us. So I'd like to give you both an opportunity to tell us a little bit about what you would like, what you would like to see as your potential impact, or what your interest area is when you join the Youth Commission. And thank you both so much for being here and jumping in.
Google first.
You can go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Vanya. So I think right now we are at a stage, Mrs. Kramer, where world needs the next generation to be kind, accepting, respectful, and humility. I consider those four as core values for human being, which we've been going through that human evolution, but often we forget about it. So I want to I imbibe that in my family and my around kids that are in my neighborhood. I want to bring that out to the greater families out there, and to, bring or nurture next generation based on those things. That would be my top priority.
Thank you. Vanya?
I do agree with Ms. Vasudevan a lot about, after the pandemic, I think especially in our high school, what I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it on my resume, but I run a podcast for the high school called Opinionated. And the whole point is really wanted to see what students think about and where they want to put their energy into conversation. In fact, just recently after the new unfortunate events happening in Ukraine, I had a lot of students reach out to me and say, I want to talk about this. Can we come together and talk about this? And there's nothing better than hearing student voices. And I think that's the main thing that sometimes students get afraid of doing. And I think especially post-pandemic, it's been harder to get groups of students together and talk about things that relate us to one another. But I think there couldn't be anything more powerful than that. So I think as a student, and especially a student at the high school and student on the board, I'd love to make more events like that happen, whether it's in diasporas of communities or just in a community as a whole. Teenagers just coming together and talking about what matters to them and thinking about how we can make an impact. I think it's really wonderful, and along with what Ms. Vasudevan said about being kind and inclusive. And, I relate to your story a lot as well. I have parents who are immigrants, and I think like the diversity in this town and the culture that this town has is truly beautiful. So just bringing that out in our students is really important. So that's what I am very looking forward to doing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, then I'm going to request a motion to appoint Vivanya Mathur to the as a student member to the Youth Commission, and we have Vasudevan to a full member as a full member to the Youth Commission to a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Amy Ritterbush,
Ritterbush, yes.
Brenda Tedstone,
Ted Stone, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere,
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
Muriel Kramer,
Muriel Kramer's a yes. Thank you.
Irfan Nasrullah is a yes as well. Congratulations. We
Thank you
look
all so
forward
much.
to your
Thank
input
you.
on the Youth Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda was the pedestrian connectivity survey results. Gary Trendle was scheduled to make a presentation to the board tonight on the results of the planning board's pedestrian connectivity survey, but he had to reschedule tentatively for the March 15th meeting. So we'll be doing that on the March 15th meeting. The next item on our agenda is the police officer appointment. The board will interview police officer candidate Matthew Latour and consider appointing him as a police officer for the town of Hopkinton. Would Matthew Latour and Joe Bennett please join the board? Chief,
Mr. Chair, good evening.
take it away, Chief.
Oftentimes we will begin these conversations with a discussion about the process, if Director Casey is available. If not, I can take care of it.
All right, I do not see her. No, I don't see her here. So why don't you run with it?
Sure. I
think she's here.
Is she?
She is. She's just working through the tech, I'd imagine.
Okay, there she is. There she is. All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. All right. Once you get us started, then.
Absolutely.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you. So we have an open-ended process for the position of police officer. Oftentimes we set a deadline and, we go through process, procedurally one by one, but we've kept the process open until filled. And we're considering all candidates. So before we used to get on average 100, 150 applications, and we'd have to prescribe a process that way. But in this way, what we've done is we've kept it open-ended. Essentially, we are recruiting all of the time now. And the different panels are poised to meet with the different candidates.
So the first round panel that interviewed Matt was Officer Diana, Officer Ferreira, Officer Normandin, and Officer Van Ralton, along with HR generalist Kristen Merrill. And that panel recommended that Matt continue in the process. And so the second interview was Deputy Chief Porter, Chief Bennett, and myself. And so we're presenting to you tonight Matt Latour for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Chief Bennett, you want to tell us a little bit about Mr. Latour?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Matt Latour comes to us fully academy trained, post-certified, with almost 2 years experience as a University of Massachusetts police officer at the hospital. What he expressed in his interview was a strong skill set of dealing with people in crisis situations and using his de-escalation skills, which he has advanced training in, to keep the situation as calm as possible. He, interestingly, has a Bachelor of Arts degree in cognitive science, which I guess someday you can explain that to me. And not just what it is, but exactly what it is. And he has some other accolades that are impressive. He was a United States Service Academy nominee who was selected by Congressman James McGovern. And he also has some other hobbies that might come of interest, especially to you through the chair, Mr. Ted Stone.
Yes, thank you.
So it is with privilege that I introduce you to Matthew Latour for your consideration for appointment as the next Hopkinton Police Department police officer.
Thank you, Chief. Matt, how you doing? Mr.
Very
Latour?
well. How are you, sir?
I am well. You want to tell us a little something about yourself? I see you're into grappling and fighting, and is that what we want?
Yep, it is.
So those are things I participated in while I was at UConn, as Chief mentioned. I graduated from University of Connecticut in 2020. So those were things I participated in there. As far as the grappling goes, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a martial art, mostly just for self-defense, controlling situations and making sure I can keep myself safe. Not really an aggressive thing in nature. As far as my boxing background, I participated in the boxing club at UConn, where I was the president and captain. And that was mostly a good opportunity to become involved in student government. So I got used to dealing with the student administration and things like that. So that was a good leadership opportunity for me to learn about myself and also how to run an organization. So I would say those things aren't things you should be too concerned about, other than they've definitely helped me establish some good characteristics to bring to the department.
Absolutely. Board members, any questions for Mr. Latour? We'll start with Amy Widebush.
I usually like to ask this one about the de-escalation. I'm so glad you have that training. And I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about what you would do in a situation where perhaps somebody has been using too many drugs and they're not really themselves and they're causing some kind of disruption and you need to calm them down to make the situation safe.
Yeah, so that's actually a situation that we deal with a lot at the hospital. So coming with that experience, what we generally do is you just start by talking. So the most important thing is to try and use verbal de-escalation first, and just try and bring people down. And I find that a lot of times, if it's safe to, the longer you can draw out the conversation and keep talking to them can sometimes naturally calm people down. We do have a lot of experience dealing with not only persons who have been using drugs, but also we work closely with the emergency mental health unit at UMass. So we're in there on a daily basis, dealing with people in crisis situations, as Chief mentioned. And those are the types of things. You just need to use verbal de-escalation first and try and buy yourself time so that you can bring in options if necessary, like other officers to assist you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tedstone.
How you doing, Matt? Nice to meet you. So I see that you grew up in Douglas. What made you want to apply to Hopkinton?
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was working at UMass, I actually got the opportunity to come work and help out with traffic in Hopkinton during the summer. So that kind of gave me some experience with the town. I got to meet a lot of the town workers, people from the fire department, people from public works, and also just everyone in the town. And I sort of got a really good feel from the town. Everyone had a lot of respect for the police department. I noticed that was a very active community. A lot of people were engaged in what was going on in Hopkinton. And so that was something that I was interested in being a part of. It's important to be involved in the community and also to have a community that wants to be involved in making the community better. And that makes the job of the police a lot easier.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So Chief Bennett, I laud you for being able to find somebody that's already academy trained. I think that's awesome. He's already got a proven track record. It's not just based on a resume. There's nothing I hate worse than when people get their jobs based on simply on their resume and on how many books that they've read. You've actually been a cop, and obviously if you've made it to this part of the process, you've done it very well. It's a very tough occupation, especially the way society views you, and no matter what you do, you can walk on water, and most of the people will say it's only because you can't swim. So I thank you very much for going through the interview process. I thank you for the job that you do, and hopefully the one that you will do in Hopkinton. And thank you for choosing us.
Thank you.
Mary Jo Lafreniere. You're muted.
Yes, cannot go through a meeting without her being muted.
You're still muted. Mary Jo, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Moving on.
We'll come back to Mary Jo.
I do try not to do that. I noticed other people had the same problem a while ago. So Hopkinton is a wonderful community, and I'm glad you want to come here. And I think that with your background, I was impressed with your resume, and I think you are really going to like this community. And I hope you stay here a very long time. Welcome to Hopkinton.
Well said.
Thank you.
Muriel Kramer.
Hi, I managed to unmute myself this time. Matthew, it's wonderful to meet you, and thank you for applying and being willing to come to Hopkinton. I'd like to hear a little bit about your story. What attracted you to law enforcement, and what is it you would like to see over the arc of your career as some ways to invest your personal interests and talents into public safety in a small town like Hopkinton?
Yeah, so I'd say originally to start, I had actually went to UConn for engineering, and so going into engineering, I started to tour the places that I would be working and things like that. I thought it was a little bit too isolated for me. I didn't like being on my own, being on a computer and doing that as a profession. I had always had policing in the back of my mind as something that was interesting to me, that I could go out and make a difference. And so that's really at the root of it was when I decided to make the change. I wanted to go into something where I could really have an impact on my community and go out and help people. And at the end of the day, feel good about the things that I do for a living. And so that was sort of it. And then I started to pursue that. Before I became a police officer at UMass, I worked security there for the police department. So I worked closely with the police department. And then through that, doing that during college was really what solidified it for me that that was something that I wanted to do.
Anything else?
Thank you so much.
So, Mr. Latour, there's not a lot that I can ask that hasn't been asked already. Chief Bennett did mention that you have a bachelor's degree in cognitive science. Do you want to illuminate what that actually is and how you see that as assisting you in your role as a police officer?
Absolutely. So cognitive science is sort of interdisciplinary. It's mostly what I studied was psychology, computer science, and linguistics. So it's really a degree to understand how the mind works, people's decision making, how they learn. And I think that's important to policing in terms of understanding the criminal mind or even just the average person that you're trying to work to help every day. And so I think it's important to understand psychology in policing.
Absolutely, and I think it comes in critically when it comes to de-escalation and just understanding the psyche and who you're dealing with and what the issue could be. So I find it extremely comforting knowing that you have that background, and in the event that your de-escalation skills don't solve the problem, that you can put them in some kind of arm lock and calm it all down. My son did Brazilian jiu-jitsu and he used to practice on me all the time, so I know the pain.
Can I ask another question through you, Mr. Chair?
Of course, please.
So I'm curious, there's an awful lot of innovation and work and just thinking through a little bit more your background and so forth. What are the ways that you see advances in those sort of bridging techniques to other service agencies, for example, for folks that have mental illness issues or substance use disorder issues and are entangled in the process largely because of external causes?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking how the police department can be a bridge in terms of getting people the resources they need?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important. I think that's going to be a growing role of the police in the future, is going to be redirecting people to other resources that can help them, because our job is really not over when the call ends. There are people who need to be directed to resources that can help them long term in order to help them and their families. So I think that's an important role for the police department. That's certainly things a lot of police departments are working towards, getting social workers involved with follow-ups and things like that. Those are good moves for the police to be making in the future.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board? No. So I'm going to request a motion to appoint Matthew Latour as a police officer for the town of Hopkinton.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
The motion's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Amy Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Brendan Tedstone?
Tedstone, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere?
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
And Irfan Nasrullah is a yes as well. Congratulations and welcome to Hopkinton, Matt.
Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing you.
Congratulations.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, of course, please.
I'd just like to welcome Matt to the HPD family, and you did a great job. And also like to thank everybody that put the work in to get Matt in front of us this evening. HR, our staff within the building. It's hard to express how much work from the time of a posting goes into to getting a final police officer candidate in front of you. We take it very seriously, and we work hard at every phase, and I just want to say thank you to everybody. And since you're right there, Maria, thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
And,
go find some more.
We're on it. We're on it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the team, and welcome aboard, Mr. Latour. Awesome.
Thank you again.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the public listening session for the fiscal year 2023 comprehensive budget. The board will hold a public listening session on the FY23 comprehensive budget. First, we'll have some orientation in the form of a broad overview of the budget process and review of the priorities in the town's financial future. Then we'll open it up to the public for questions, comments, and feedback on the budget proposal. The town is in the middle of the budget process. At the select board's next meeting, the board will vote to forward a budget to the appropriations committee for public hearing and review. It's important to note that all voters will have an opportunity to vote on the budget at the annual town meeting on May 2nd. Mr. Khumalo.
Mr. Chair, through you, I will also be joined by Tim O'Leary, the CFO, in giving the summary broad overview of the proposed FY23 budget. We will also be joined by Chris Heyman as well as Ben Sweeney in answering some of the questions that may come from the board as well as the public. In terms of our roadmap, I will give a broad overview, discuss the priorities and the town's financial future. Thirdly, focus the bulk of our evening discussion on listening carefully to the community. And the bigger question is, why are we here tonight? We're here tonight to promote engagement, fairness, and transparency. The question that some of the residents may have is, well, Mr. Khumalo, the individual boards and committees and town departments have reached out to the community and sought the community's input, which is brilliant, which is fantastic. The reason why we're here tonight is that we're giving the opportunity to the community for us to reason together, listen to each other carefully, and deliberate on the broader picture of the budget, giving visibility on how the budget comes together. And that discussion extends far beyond what you normally find in the individual departmental discussions of the budget with the public. Ben, next slide. This process, the FY23 budget process, will not have been possible.
I'm sorry, Mr. Khumalo, we don't have, are you intending for a slide presentation? I do not see a slide up.
Ben,
can you?
Visual vision.
Ben, you there? Can you get the slideshow up?
Through the chair, if someone could forward it to me. Thank you.
It's in the packet and it starts on page 13 of 133.
Ben, if it's much easier, I've shared the document with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Silence contagious in moments like these.
Yeah.
There we go. Please continue, Mr. Moss.
Yes, next slide, Ben. Yes. Yeah, this process would not have been possible without the great work, input, as well as generosity of the community, the town's boards and committees, the budget advisory group, as well as our staff in both the school as well as the town departments. Next slide. The proposed FY23 budget is approximately $104.5 million with a projected tax increase of 2.09%. And if approved, it will do the following: maintain current service levels, help us pay our bills. We specifically are targeting increases in growth in budgets that will address equity, inclusion, and belonging. We've put an effort in making sure that we renew our capital program. As we have done in past years, we have paid attention to addressing in a very minimal way the town's long-term financial liabilities. And most importantly, and you'll be hearing the final judgment coming from the Appropriations Committee, we wanted this budget to be compliant with our town policies. Next slide. It is always helpful to understand where we are now before projecting the future. In that regard, the public may be wondering, where are we in terms of our FY22 budget? Tax collections remain strong. Unlike other communities, we did not have an adverse impact on our local receipts from the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the revenue side. On the expenses, as we always do, town meeting approves the budget. Our work is not complete. We're very frugal in how we spend, and we're always emphasizing complying and with staying within our budgets. So we are on track and trending as anticipated. Next. Biggest discussion in any budget is what are the sources of revenue and what are the expenses. One thing that really stands out in Hopkinton is that our first discussion point is establishing what exactly do we have in our resource, in our funding sources, in our revenues. And then we use that to then start a conversation in terms of, therefore, how do we design the expenditures? We have distributed this chart. The one on the left, my left, are the sources of funds. Clearly, as we have said in past discussions, property tax is the one that is blue in color. And then red, that's local aid, excise tax, and certified free cash. On the expenditure side, look to the pie chart that is on the right-hand side. The largest expenditure comes from the school department, followed by benefits insurance, and then the other smaller town departments, public safety, public works, and then general government. And you can see debt payments is the one in brown, is pretty much gaining in size. And we will talk more in detail later about this if questions come around that topic. Next slide, Ben. Just big picture, property taxes. The big discussion is around what is our overall tax base. We look at new growth, excluded debt, and the overlay reserve. This is a term that you've been hearing in the last 3-4 weeks. Tim O'Leary will explain shortly what that really means in terms of our budget. Our tax base as projected for FY23 is approximately 78 million, new growth 2.5 million, excluded debt 6.1 million, and for the overlay reserve, we are putting aside 2.5 million. State aid, we've been fortunate, as we've said in the most recent weeks, that the state has been very generous to Hopkinton. we are projecting 9.6 million. Certified free cash. Again, there's this whole discussion about what is free cash. It is not free cash. It's money that we went to town meeting, a town meeting approval to spend, and we found ways to contain the expenditures. And at the same time also, it reflects what comes in terms of our projected revenues. The bulk of this 3.1 million is largely from higher than expected revenues. And secondly, the savings from the hiring freeze that the select board and the town manager implemented during COVID. Other revenues were projecting 7.3 million. And again, this puts our projected revenue at $104.5 million. Next slide. As I said, Tim O'Leary is going to give more details in terms of the overlay levels. As you can see, all pre-FY22, we have the tax appeals in blue and the overlay in red. They were around about 2.5 million. Then FY22 and before, that number jumps up to, for the tax appeals, over $5 million. And then the overlay account was just above 2.5 million. FY23 expected. The tax appeals are around $10 million. And we have explained in our prior meetings that the main driver behind this is Eversource. And the overlay account that we're putting aside to protect the town is over $5 million. Next slide. Expenditures. Again, balancing with our revenues, the total 104.5 million, sorry. It's a large number. And the town departments account for approximately $37 million. Schools, including the Hopkinton Public Schools and Kiff Tech, 57 million. The debt, principal, and interest, all departments put together, 7.1 million. And then the total proposed general fund operating budget, if you put those together, is approximately $101 million. Capital and reserves. Pay-as-you-go capital items, 2.9 million. Contribution to OPEP, 420. All these numbers together add up to the proposed budget of $104.5 million. Next slide. Just to break down where the increases are and where we're seeing decreases in the proposed FY23 budget. Increases, $1.1 million in capital projects, $2.6 million from education, $1.2 million town departments, and $1.1 million for employee benefits. Decreases, as we've explained before, in our prior meetings, we are looking at a decrease in debt service of approximately $337,000. Enterprise funds. Water Enterprise Fund, the biggest concern for us is PFAS. The request presented by DPW represents a 4.5% decrease in the FY23 operating budget. Capital requests amount to $2 million, approximately $2 million, including $1.9 million in PFAS-related costs. Then the Sewer Enterprise Fund, financially stable, slight increase projected at 0.5%, and there are no capital requests in FY23. And the big question may be, where's the Park and Rec enterprise? As some of you may remember, we went to town meeting and we no longer have a Park and Rec enterprise. So we only have two enterprises in town, water and sewer. And then capital budgets, pay as you go, as I said earlier, $2.9 million is projected. Proposed capital projects, capital outlay from borrowing, $4.3 million, of which, as I just said, water enterprise will be about $2 million. And then Community Preservation Fund, which is a fund that the town has invested in for years. We are projecting an expenditure of $1.3 million, bringing the total capital outlay of all funds at approximately $10.7 million. How do our reserves look at this point? General stabilization, we're at 3.9. Capital stabilization, we're still at 347,000. And then the school stabilization fund is $3.1 million. Next slide, Ben. The key takeaway, I think going back to what I said at the beginning, we are looking at tonight's discussion as the continuation of our public engagement process. And in that regard, from my perspective, this is our moment to, again, celebrate the fact that the budget that will eventually be presented to town meeting is the community's budget. And therefore, engaging community residents, soliciting their feedback meaningfully and effectively is a key integral part to our budget process. It's a key strategic priority for us, and we are looking forward to listening very carefully to the feedback and comments that will come up tonight. And Mr. Chair, with your permission, Tim O'Leary, overlay.
Please take it away, Tim.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ben, if you can go back to slide 8 on the slide deck. I'll just talk briefly about the overlay situation. Mass General Laws has a provision in Chapter 59 that says the assessors must raise an overlay account to cover abatements, including tax appeals. So there's really 3 things that get paid out of the overlay. The first is the abatements that are granted by the work of the Board of Assessors and the Select Board. Those are things like the limited income senior exemption, disabled veterans exemption. Those amount to a very small amount of the property tax collection, about 1/20th of 1%. The second thing that gets covered is abatements that are requested of the Board of Appeals and that are approved. If someone says, you know, I was being taxed on a pool and I decided to tear up the pool and fill it in, you haven't adjusted it, you've overtaxed me. People appeal, very few people appeal, under 0.25%, and very few are granted. It's a very small amount of money that gets paid out of the overlay for that. Often true errors due to the cyclical nature of the update process, things that just get missed. The third and growing issue for us is to settle cases from the Appellate Tax Board. So these would be appeals that are made to the Board of Assessors and are rejected, and then the taxpayer has the right to appeal to the Appellate Tax Board or to other courts. It's our big issue right now. We have $6.6 million in appeals right now that we either have or we expect have been rejected to LNG by the Board of Appeals, and we expect to have come in as actual ATB appeals. In terms of how the overlay works, there's not much guidance. The State Department of Revenue has issued a little guidance publication, and it really says almost nothing. It says towns must maintain a balance in the overlay account that is adequate, but they don't really define what adequate is. They say assessors must analyze the overlay balance and determine whether it's adequate. And then every year when we file our financial filings with the Department of Revenue, the Commissioner of Revenue has to look at the overlay balance and determine whether it is reasonable to cover the anticipated costs. And so I looked for more guidance on how the Commissioner does that. And there is some guidance that says what the Commissioner really looks at is the potential abatement liability in cases pending before the Appellate Tax Board. So as the blue boxes grow on this chart in front of you, the Commissioner's looking at that and looking at the exposure, but there's really no definition of how big the red boxes would be. If we were 100% certain we would prevail in all the cases, the red boxes could be tiny. If we felt we were likely to lose, the red boxes should be almost as big as the blue boxes. And so the challenge we have is trying to determine what level of overlay we should have, given the uncertainty that's out there right now. And just to give you a little recap of what our overlay situation is, we have right now appeals of $6.68 million, and we have $3.85 million in the overlay balance. So that's those middle columns that you see right there. And of course, we're anticipating another $3.5 million. Sorry, I have it on my board. Another $3.5 million in appeals next year. And we have to think about that because this is the budget that's going to be available to us for next year. So we're talking about the 23 budget that would be available to us to cover our overlay for the expected appeals next year. It's well in the future. It's a lot of forecasting. And you can see we're pretty close to the middle of the road there. I mean, I could go on about this, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, Tim, can you then relate this information to the numbers in the budget, i.e. there's money that is put in some line account for this purpose, and the residents of this town are actually taxed for that money.
Okay,
And
excellent point. Ben, can you go to the previous slide, slide 7? So you see the fourth number there, overlay reserve, $2.5 million off what we're getting from the tax base. So we're going to go out and tax the property owners really $2.5 million more than we would need to if we did not have these appeals. And we're going to set it aside in the overlay account. So this definitely has a tax impact in the near term to the taxpayers to do that. That's the effect of it. That's money that's not available to us this year to spend that we have to set aside. It is there. It's not disappearing. It's going to be an asset of the town. When we ultimately prevail in these cases, we will be able to recover that money and use it for other purposes and have it appropriated for other purposes. It can be released from the overlay account, but the appeals are stacking up faster than they are being resolved. We actually just received a notice that several of our appeals from fiscal years 2017, 18, and 19 will be taken up by the Appellate Tax Board, and that could resolve $1.6 million of the 6.6. So, this year our batch of appeals raised by $3.2 million, and our best hope is that we can resolve 1.6 million of that. So we have this wave of appeals that is growing because it's easier to file them than to settle them. So they can be filed with the stroke of a pen, and it takes us years of protracted effort to settle them. So we expect a accumulating stack of these appeals unless the Appellate Tax Board sends some clear direction to Eversource and they begin to realize it's futile for them to continue appealing these tax bills.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, at this point, we would like to give the opportunity to the public to provide their comments, questions on the proposed FY23 budget.
Sure. So we're going to be using the raise hand feature for public comments. I see one hand raised, and that would be Janice Barry. Ben, can you liven her up? Janice, you're up.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We certainly can.
All right, great. I'm not sure if you can see me or not, but
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
okay. Oh, great. All right, awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Janice Barry, and I'm a trustee for the library. And I wanted to come tonight to express support for the library budget, specifically the ask for an additional full-time staff member for the FY23 budget. I believe this is very, very important, and it will give great benefit directly to the town. In 2017, when the library was nearly doubled, the staffing was not. And while we have this amazing, incredible building that provides so much more space and opportunity to residents, we don't have enough of the time and resources through our staffing to meet those needs. So I believe it's really important that we make this correction for FY23, as it's sort of been we've been catching up in some ways. The other benefits of having an additional staff member would be to increase access for patrons on the weekend, opening up for Saturday and hopefully Sunday hours as well, which would provide more access for the community, internet access, opportunity for students to study and meet together. For me personally, as a family with a young family, going to the library on the weekend would be a destination in conjunction with the upcoming Main Street downtown revitalization project. It's an opportunity to have the library open, to spend time with my family, to go down the street and buy a sandwich for lunch. I think it's a great access, particularly on the weekend, that would be beneficial to the town from a economic standpoint too, in terms of bringing people as a destination. And finally, I want to say that it directly supports the strategic plan that was recently published. From the strategic plan, a lot of community residents expressed specifically that they want to have more hours, expanded hours, new services, more events for all ages, community engagement, more visible engagement with diversity, equity, and social justice. And those things cannot happen without additional staffing. Our library staff has worked incredibly hard through the course of the pandemic, and as well as before and now currently. And they are not able to do all of these things that the community would like to do, to see without this additional staffing. So I would highly recommend that you support that part of the budget and help the library catch up on these needed resources for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the insight. Next up, we have Cheryl Ann Walsh. I'm gonna ask if if we can kind of keep our comments to 2 minutes, so we can keep this moving along. But Cheryl Ann, you are up.
Thank you. I'm Cheryl Ann Walsh, 5 Pond Street, from Project Just Because. And I just wanted to make a public comment, that we serve the Hopkinton Food Pantry over 20 years, and COVID has increased the need in our community. We serve basic needs, and we try as our town grows, to help with community service, work with the schools for children in need, senior projects. Domestic abuse has increased in the past 5 days. I've seen 3 different families with 3 different needs, from cancer to domestic abuse, safety to elderly needs, and it's increasing. Hopkinton, we serve other communities also, but I just wanted to thank the board and the budget for the consideration of continuing to support Project Just Because as our community grows with diversity, and we want to be here to help as a resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Laura Hancock-Barry. Laura, you're up.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say. Laura Hancock-Barry. I'm chairperson of the Hopkinton Public Library Foundation, and I'm also here to echo the comments of Janice Berry, the trustee that spoke a few minutes ago, about the budget for the library, and specifically increasing the library's budget from its current appropriation to the appropriation of $947,000. As Janice Berry said, there are so many needs of the community with respect to the library. It serves each and every person in our town, and from toddlers and pre-K students to elders. And having the increased hours would be absolutely essential for serving our community. But I also just want to ask the board to consider in full staffing the full-time positions that are in the budget, the assistant director position, as well as the other full-time budgets. Our town and our library and our citizens, the residents, really deserve a professional full-time staff. And right now, with only just a handful of full-time staff and our library director, it really is under-resourced and cannot reach its full capacity for serving the public. And by fully staffing these positions, it will become more, the leadership will be more able to focus on working with the community and growing the services. And I also just want to point out that even with this increase for the library, it is still a minuscule fraction of our town's budget. It would still be under 1% of the entire budget, whereas now it's just a hair over 0.5%. So I really think that now is the time to grow these services, as our town has grown in population over the last several years, and we do want to meet the needs of our community. And I thank you so much for taking the time for this listening session tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate the input and the feedback. Certainly helps to have the public let us know what they want us to prioritize. Next up, we have Kelly Grill. Kelly, you're up.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for giving me a minute to speak tonight about the HCA. I'm coming to talk of what happened through COVID, the effects of COVID on the HCA, and also what the HCA is offering to the town. As many of you know, during COVID, we had to shut down for a couple of months, but we came back stronger in the sense that we realized that the community really needed to connect, they needed to be together. So we offered several free concerts, we offered online classes, and we did our best to stay open. We heard from several members of the community that the concerts and the events that we held were sort of their lifeline during COVID to help with just connecting and mental health issues, and just as a gathering space to feel sort of normal again. Currently, the HCA serves over 2,500 students. We see 15,000 visitors a year for more. We've grown to see more than 340 different communities that we connect with through the tri-state area. But due to the nature of our business, COVID hit us hardest in the decrease of those indoor performances, our private lessons, and our rentals. Singing, sitting close proximity in a studio, and live celebrations proved to be too much of a risk for spreading COVID. So we saw about an 80% decrease in that revenue, totaling between the 2 years over $500,000 between those programs. In addition, at the same time, we were down 3 employees, 2 that retired early due to COVID, and 1 that it was just too difficult to work in person because she had little children. So in order to mitigate the loss of revenue, we simply did not rehire that staffing. So now, as things are gearing up again, it is a real struggle for us the staff is completely overwhelmed and overworked, and it's really been challenging for us to continue to be ready for what we hope and see as life turning a little bit back to normal, and being able to have people enter the building again and enjoy all of our programs. So we appreciate consideration for how these past 2 years have been difficult on all nonprofits, and specifically on the HCA. We look forward to growing the programming with our new building and with the support of the town. I appreciate the members, we appreciate the time listening to us tonight for what our needs are.
Thank you so much. I do not see any other hands raised. Ben, am I mistaken here?
Through the chair, I do not see any other hands raised as well.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for participating tonight, especially Tim. I think that was a fantastic presentation, and I think it's really helpful for the public to understand what all these terms mean, what the overlay is, why we have an overlay, and just and you know and free cash as well. You know, it's where does this come from? Why is it free? I think it's really helpful for the public to understand all these numbers that we're batting around. I'm going to open this up to the board. Do any of the board members have any questions for Mr. O'Leary or Mr. Sweeney?
I did. Since we had a couple of comments about the library budget, so I take it this was in the change from January to February. We reduced the library budget a little bit to compensate for the loss of the Eversource or the Eversource appeal. Is that right?
Through the chair, yes, ma'am. That's correct. We provided a updated memo, which is in your package tonight, and it's on page 69 of 133 in your package, if you have access to that. And it shows the latest February 18th update that shows the line item for the library, with it going from 584,000 to 784, $199,500 increase to the library.
And Mr. Chair, specifically, because this has been raised, we are proposing 4 additional staff, of which one of them we're proposing will begin July 1, 2022, and the remaining 3 will begin January 1, 2023.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Tedstone, any questions, comments? Nope. Okay. Mary Jo Lafreniere, any questions, comments? I know you always have something to say about the Eversource tax appeal, so bring it on.
Well, but I've been doing this for a lot of years now too, and that was a pretty good explanation. The only thing I would add is that we have to keep money in the overlay in case we lose a case, and then we would have to pay out millions at one shot. So it doesn't make any sense not to put as much in the overlay to cover our cases at the ATB as we can, because we're going to get hit one way or the other. And this is a smaller hit than if, and I'm not saying we're going to lose because I don't think we are, but because we've been working on this a long time, and we did win the first 3 years of cases that Eversource filed against us. It seems like every time they have a change in personnel or ownership or lawyers, they try to make a big deal of it. And now they're really hurting the town. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one comment as well?
Please, please.
That may, I don't think it was said that to preserve a taxpayer's right to appeal for real property, they need to pay the full tax bill. So we have the money, and if the town loses an appeal, we have to pay it back. And that was what Ms. Lafreniere was talking about. I just wanted to point, I don't think it had been said earlier by Mr. O'Leary.
Thank you. That's actually very helpful, because not something that I was actually quite aware of.
Thank you, Ben.
I think that's very helpful to know. Muriel Kramer.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. I think it's incredibly helpful. And I'm actually hoping, and I know this flies in the face of all things hoping to be paperless, I'm hoping that I can prevail upon the staff to make a paper copy for me, because I think it's going to be really useful over time to have. I do have a couple of questions. The free cash, I somewhat understand it, not as a municipal financial wizard. Is that free cash all of the unexpended funds for all departments, or are some departments excluded from that free cash amount?
Everything that is unexpended in the general fund goes into free cash. Funds that are unexpended in the enterprise funds go to the retained earnings of the enterprise funds. But it is everything from all town departments.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, may I jump in there? Because this may help shed some light. Ben, it may be helpful for you to explain the balances that show up in our accounts. There are balances that flow into free cash. There are balances that are retained in the accounts, just broadly speaking, without any specifics.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The town operates on what's called funds. So we often hear the general fund, and that's what most of the town operations move through. So any revenue greater than anticipated or money that's unexpended that was authorized in the general fund flows to what's called free cash. We can also refer to as equity. Free cash is kind of the colloquial term in Massachusetts. Another common fund is the Community Preservation Fund. So again, any funds that are in excess of what's anticipated for revenue. One example is we got a great match from the state for the CPC funds this year. So that is going to flow through to the CPC retained earnings. Same thing for the water enterprise funds and for the water enterprise fund and the sewer enterprise fund. The town also has what's called special revenue accounts, and those are applied by statute. One example of that is the ambulance receipts reserved. Money for that is brought in and then appropriated by town meeting once money is in hand. Other pieces are revolving funds that stay within the revolving fund from year to year. So it's very structured in the statutory fund form.
I really appreciate that. Through you, Mr. Chair, a follow-up on that question. I think it would make a great addition to this information packet to see the kind of detail we saw in the graphics on the CPC funds, what is committed, what is available, on the revolving funds. That would also be helpful. I think it just, first of all, puts the different funds in front of people in a way that helps them retain knowledge that they exist. Most of us don't work with this every day. Does that include the schools as well? Do we see that detail as well? If we did that?
We do see that. It's in the Munis system that the town operates. So all the schools' accounts are visible within the town, but controlled by the school department. Sure.
I think that we all understand that, but that would make, in my mind, that would make a great addition to the informational packet. Particularly, the graphs are really helpful, I think, for folks that don't interact with municipal budgets as a profession. So I really appreciated that, and whatever we can do to sort of add to that detail would be really appreciated. I have the benefits and insurance. This is another just general question. That is for all town employees, right? So school employees, police, all town employees.
That's correct. And when you look at the graphs that show the breakdown by spending, probably more than half of that benefits and insurance relates to the school operation, and probably more than half of the debt piece relates to the school operation. So if you stack those side by side, that half of the pie that is the schools tends to grow.
Yes, yeah, I think I understand that. The other question I have, I think that it would be really helpful in this kind of presentation. It would have helped me, and I think going forward, it might help other people, would be to have the proposed CPC expenditures detailed out, and maybe I missed it. It was a big packet. I don't know if that detail was.
We put that that's in the appropriation report that is produced before town meeting and vetted before town meeting. I guess the situation we're in here is typically we develop that report and it was 97 page or 79 pages last year. We developed that over a long period of time, and we're kind of giving you the preview here halfway through filming. And so, and then there's time constraints and space constraints. And so we focused really on the general fund and on the capital, but if there's sensitivity to that and more interest, we can certainly add that.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Ben, because the question has been raised regarding CPC, it may be helpful for you in very brief form to explain the effort that you have put towards working with CPC in really bringing visibility to its accounts?
Certainly. Mr. Chair, just one prior comment. The CPC articles that are going to be recommended are on the capital improvement page of the budget. There are line items for the CPC budget. So those are the proposed spending for CPC. And Mr. Kamala is right. I've been working really closely with the CPC to get a roll forward of all the available balances. Those are presented to them about monthly, and I'm happy to present it to the select board as well for that same type of visibility. It's a roll forward of where the balances are today, revenues, anticipated expenditures for debt, and then capital items that are approved. I would just add one note for the capital items. The CPC is still considering some potential land purchases. Negotiations are being discussed, and the CPC, may or may not vote on that based on the results of those negotiations. So that's to come in the coming weeks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one more follow up on the CPC. Thank you all so much. I think that's really helpful. If there is, as that finalizes, if there is a way to sort of keep that top of mind for the public, so in preparation for town meeting, people can really exchange with the intended articles, the proposed expenditures, and understand the process to interact with that information on town meeting floor. It can happen quickly, and I think a lot of us understand the process, but I think also a lot of people come to town meeting and exchange with the information for the first time, or maybe even come to the town meeting and it's one of their first times there, and it's a little complex to understand how they might ask questions about or question the expenditures of particular items, and I think that would be helpful. And I think the only other point along that same line would be those capital expenditures. And did you just tell me that all the CPC items are also on the capital expenditure list? So that would be that would be all inclusive.
There's a document on the town website, the FY23 budget transmittal, and it does have all those as capital improvements, capital Community Preservation Act is page 15, I think, and the other capitals are in there.
It has everything on it.
So it's on enclosure 5 of the budget memo, and it'll be in the Appropriation Committee report.
Yes.
And it's on page 74, 133 of your package tonight. Again, 133 page package, and 80 pages of it was this document. So it's a lot. There's a lot there.
Right.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you all for that, and I appreciate sort of the help getting through the packet. It is a lot, even for people who have interacted with this material from our perspective over time. It can be a lot. So I think then my final point would be information for the public to interact. This is sort of, these are the moving pieces on town meeting floor that have a real impact to your ongoing tax bill or the financial picture of the town. So whatever we can do to make sure that we are being we're supporting people's ability to interact with the material it would be really helpful. So anyway, thank you. I know how much work goes into this, and I know all the folks from the school are on the meeting, but not in front of me. And I know that there's an awful lot of work that goes into this moment in time, and then also getting ready for town meeting. So I appreciate everybody's efforts to get this in front of the public and make it so clear to us.
Thank you. Mary Jo Lafreniere.
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of procedural. The procurement grants, assessors, and treasurer collector now have no budget. It's all gone under the financial services budget.
So
no, I mean, it's all zeros.
Yeah. So the procurement has been bundled under the town accountant, and the assessor and treasurer collector has been bundled under finance.
Okay, now when I get down to a procedural, I know in the assessor's office, we have run over yearly frequently because of mapping and revaluation companies and things that don't, and we've always been able to encumber the money to pay the bills. So it doesn't go to free cash, it gets encumbered for a specific bill. Can departments still do that?
Nothing will change in the way we administer and pay our bills through this reorganization. It's just to align the organization and the finance. That's the purpose.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Much.
All right, thank you. I just want to say, I think it was, I thought that was a fantastic presentation.
Great.
It is a lot to what Mayor Kramer was saying. It's an awful lot. And I think that you guys did a fantastic job of distilling it down into something that makes it a lot more, a lot easier to digest and understand what are we really talking about. The devil's in the details, and 79 pages of those details are there. So I certainly appreciate the broad overlook. And I also appreciate the level of detail that is in there. I do see that we have one more hand raised. And seeing as how we have the time for this, I'm going to open it up to Mina Barath. Mina, Ben, can you liven Mina up? Mina,
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you also for presenting a comprehensive budget here. I have two questions. One is on the library front. There seems to be an increase. Just wanted to understand what that is about.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Kwala.
Yeah, Mina, good question. The increase accounts for 4 additional staffing positions. The assistant director and 3 supervisors. This is perhaps phase 1 of a much larger process where we're really bringing library staffing to be on par with the expectations for services that the community has expressed.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm always in support of spending on the library. It's a service we love. And obviously with the growth in the community, I think that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying. The other question I have is on the expenses on the senior center front. That expense increase seems to be minuscule. Are we not doing enough for our seniors? What was the ask? What more can be done for our seniors?
Another brilliant question. Mina, I've been with the town for 12 years. And one of the things that we've done with the team from the senior center is to really look at expanding programming. And you'll see that over the years, we've done that. This proposed budget in FY23, we're targeting expanding transportation for seniors. So that minuscule increase that you are seeing is intended to bring more seniors from their homes to the senior center, as well as taking them to other areas of interest within Hopkinton and outside Hopkinton. So it will be supporting transportation. We are also fortunate that this is a community where there is strong volunteer support for seniors. It comes in 2 forms. We have volunteers that show up physically and provide volunteer services for seniors. We also have an organization called the Friends of the Seniors. They bring in additional resources to help support programming at the senior center. That's why you see the increases is very small. It's because we have other funding sources to support the expanding programs at the senior center.
I appreciate the response, Mr. Khumalo. I really wish that we look for ways to increase that and bolster that programming and empower our director there and all the people there to show that we care for our seniors by putting money there. I would want to see that. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Thank you again for
Thank you,
your
Mina.
response.
Thank you,
Through
Mina.
the chair.
Please, Mr. Rubush.
I don't think this was mentioned, but I think there is also a pay-as-you-go capital item for the senior center for expanding the dining facility this year. I think assumed due to growth.
Yes, there is. And I think it's shown, it's going to be managed, that project is going to be managed by the facilities department.
And through
the chair.
So the funding for the senior center, are they going into separate buckets where we have like the expansion through the capital improvements, and then we have programming that goes into different, we have transportation for the cars, trucks, and buses? Do we have different buckets for each one of those, or is it just a general, line item that goes to the senior center and that gets divided up the way they want?
Yeah, we have two buckets. There's the bucket of increases in the operating budget. There's also the increase that is shown in the capital projects list.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Mr. Fennier.
I know this is a budget meeting, but I know it was in the paper last time I read it, town paper, and I'm on the board. So the MWRTA did give us the ride bus. And I don't know how often it's being used, but I do please encourage seniors to use it. It's very inexpensive. It'll take you to Framingham, it'll take you grocery, it'll take you anywhere. And we got it from the MWRTA.
Thank you. I think that's really important for people to know, and important for everyone to understand the services that are available. Any other comments, questions? All right. So I guess, well, thank you, everyone. That was a fantastic presentation. And thank you to the public for providing your input. And we have some directives from the public and a way to move forward. So we will now continue on with our agenda. The next agenda item is the 2022 annual town meeting articles. The board will review the language of some of its own articles and list what the language was included with the packet. We'll go through them one at a time for questions and comments. So board members, I'm just going to do it similar to the way we did it last week, not 2 weeks ago now, where I'll just kind of call the line item. And if anyone has something to say, please speak up. So the first thing would be the last fiscal year supplemental appropriations and transfers. Anyone have any thoughts? No. Second is unpaid bills from previous fiscal years. The next one is current fiscal year operating budget.
Just going through that.
I'm sorry, say that again? You're just reviewing it?
No.
Okay. Revolving fund spending limits. Transfer to other post-employment benefits liability trust fund. Anyone? No? Feel like that teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller.
Anyone?
All right. Transfer to general stabilization fund. Anyone? Transfer to capital expense stabilization fund. And then number 8 is pay-as-you-go capital expenses.
I thought maybe we could put what those all are on the screen. I think it's in the packet on page 73.
Ben, can you put that on the screen so everyone can see? Well, actually, this is for us to review our own articles. And I think this is an opportunity for us to discuss each of those articles. So did any board members have any thoughts, comments, questions on those articles?
So I guess the center school reuse design, could we hear a little bit more about that? I know they've sent out an RFI, and how would that relate to this?
Mr. Crowell?
Yes, briefly, as we all know, the Permanent Building Committee is looking at the feasibility of continuing municipal uses at Center School. What the appropriation is putting forth is it is anticipated that from the RFI process, there will be a need for the town to do some work, specifically with regard to aspects of the project that will address specific town needs. For example, additional offices, storage, gymnasium, and offices. If the outcome is that a partnership between the town and the private entity is possible, we want to make sure that the town assets its needs scientifically, concretely, and involves the public. So the funding that you are seeing being requested will allow for that process to occur.
Okay, and we will have more information before town meeting because the RFIs will be due soon. So
Yes, and remember, this in fact is a two-step process. What the board is looking at tonight is the article language. When we get to the stage of formulating the motions, we will come to the board with more specific, concrete motion language that will identify exactly what we'll be asking town meeting to fund.
Okay.
Excellent. Mayor Kramer?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up, Amy. Thank you for asking that question. So if I understand this correctly, this is a two-step process for the $100,000 for the town to contemplate its piece if the second piece of the bigger process is to go forward, which is the RFI partnership idea. And I'm curious to know more about how we engage with that bigger piece of the question.
The bigger piece being the private component?
Whatever the RFI process is, the outcome there, the partnership that's contemplated, all of that. How do we interact with that?
Yeah, here's how. Coming out of the RFI process would be some concept as to how the town may proceed. And that concept then translates to an RFP. When first the results of the RFI are put together and known, the Permanent Building Committee will come before the Select Board to present the results of that RFI process. And secondly, if the process then moves to a request for proposals, at the time the RFP is put together, the Permanent Building Committee will come again and present that to the Select Board at a public meeting. The idea here being, yes, the Permanent Building Committee does hold public meetings. The Select Board, because of the feasibility of your public process, provides a much more bigger venue for the public's participation. So there will be two opportunities at each stage for the public to participate. First, at the PBC meetings, and then secondly, when the PBC makes its presentations and recommendations to the Select Board.
So if I could, one more through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's helpful. So if I understand it correctly, the $100,000 is somewhat separate from that. And that is just broad terms, that is money that we would look to use if there is a partnership to design or impact the town's in particular needs for that property?
Correct. The alternative being, if there is no partnership, then we go back to plan A, where the permanent building committee is coming to the select board and saying to the select board, we need to go to town meeting to request. I think the number that we were looking at previously was between $15 and $20 million.
Yeah, that's been the advertised number for an awfully long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions or comments on the articles? All right.
I think under
So-
it did under capital, or sorry, pay-as-you-go capital. So
Sure.
the largest item on there, I was just going to call out as a fire truck. Is that the replacement for the one that was damaged in the fire, or that's a separate item?
That's a separate item.
Separate item.
There's one fire truck that needed to be replaced, and the second one that caught fire, that was soon to be replaced, but that's not the one that's here.
Okay, so that one may be covered by insurance or something.
Maybe.
What we're expecting, what we're hoping for, I think. All right. Okay, well, so we can move forward.
I'm sorry. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, you may.
My apologies if I have missed this. What is the marathon school cost that's on there?
That's on the,
it's a borrowing. It's on the same slide.
Yeah.
I just have no recollection of what that is about.
I'm sorry. What are you referring to, Meryl?
The marathon school borrowing, $695,900.
Is that
Amount
an
requested.
a classroom
Which of these
addition?
articles?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's additional classrooms.
It is. I'm sorry. I'm down at the bottom of the page. My eyes wandered down to the bottom of the page.
Okay.
Can anybody just tell me that really quickly?
That it's additional classrooms?
Is it an additional classroom?
Yeah, we talked about it because kids are out in the hall right now, so.
Okay, all right,
There's a
thank
little
you.
space and we're, putting in some additional classrooms. Right?
Mr. Kamalo?
How I remember it.
Yes, that's correct. Ben, feel free to provide more details.
It's just through you, Mr. Chair, just going back to one point to your question, Ms. Ritterbusch, the item that's in the PAYGO capital for engine 4, that is the engine that was destroyed in a fire. And the anticipation is that insurance proceeds would come for that. There's another engine 2, that's a scheduled replacement. It's under the borrowing that's a little bit lower on the sheet.
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
And then to the question, the marathon school, I don't know if the school is still on, but that was the article that was approved at the last town meeting for, I believe, 4 new classrooms at Marathon. And then that cost was brought forward. And then with all the supply chain issues and cost increases, the project manager with the schools working with anticipated a cost increase. So it's a request for a cost increase related to that project.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Great. All right. Any other questions on the articles? No? All right. We will move forward on the agenda to the next agenda item, which is the town manager report. Mr. Kamalo.
Mr. Chair, there is no new report to be issued under the town manager's report.
Wow.
That is clearly outstanding, Mr. Kamalo.
There's little fires everywhere. I guess you put them all out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kamalo. Next item would be the liaison reports. Does anyone have any? Seeing none. Future board agenda items. Do any board members have any future agenda items?
I do have a question about future board agenda items.
Yes.
How are we going to start to tackle those and start plucking off the list of future agenda items that we have talked about?
Well, I think we need to, Ms. Lazarus, if you could maybe forward that list of future agenda items, and perhaps we can all kind of prioritize them as to when we want to deal with them.
Yeah. In fact, Mr. Chair, I think up to and leading to the current budget season, we were bringing 1 or 2 per meeting, but because the focus in the last, I think, couple months has been on the budget, we haven't done that. So good timing. I think what we should aim for is as soon as we are over the budget season and the town meeting, annual town meeting, we then jump back onto that list and make sure we go through them.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
I think we did get through a few of them in the early fall. Yeah.
I know we did, but I think it would be helpful to have the list where we can kind of prioritize what we want to do and then start tackling them again after we get through this, after we get through the budget season.
Right.
Maybe
Through the chair.
Mr. Chair, oh, I'm sorry,
I just want to say,
Mary Jo,
the Cumberland Farm intersection is not going to go away. I hate to say that because, nobody wants to deal with it, but another big accident there this week and a car was totaled. I don't know if we have to put an officer out there to direct the traffic to get people used to using it a different way or what we have to do, but it's just not going to go away. It's years ago they did a study. It was the most dangerous place in the town.
right. So I think we can.
That's all I'm saying is keep hearing it.
Okay. I mean, okay, so you're bringing it up during the future agenda items.
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I
think
want.
what we can probably do is get a report on what's been done and what the next steps are. I know that Cumberland Farms has taken some measures to discourage turning left, and they've made enter only and exit only. But we can have a better report than what I just rattled off at a future agenda item, at a future meeting.
Yeah, at a future meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask one question?
Yes, Muriel Kramer, you wanted to speak.
I wonder if we could just carry the future agenda item list like we do the liaison list on our meeting packet. I think that would help us keep it in mind and be thinking about it.
Absolutely. I don't see why not. I mean,
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Well, in that case, Amy, I'm going to leave it up to you right now.
Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Amy Ritterbush,
Ritterbush, yes.
Brenda Tedstone,
Tedstone, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere,
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
Muriel Kramer,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Nirvana Srul is a yes as well. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
See you in
Thank
what,
you.
2 weeks?
See you soon.
Good night.
Bye.